Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Before I introduce you to our guest, here's a quote that I picked just for this episode. Well, there's two. I'm going to read two of them. The first one is, "We love life not because we are used to living, but because we are used to loving." Friedrich Nietzsche. And the second one, of course, I lost it. Here it is. "The surest way to corrupt a youth is to instruct him to hold in higher esteem those who think alike than those who think differently." Friedrich Nietzsche. Our guest today is a returning guest. If you haven't heard this person on the Culture Matters podcast, you're going to look out for their name and listen to that episode. I can promise you, very different conversation than we have today. They are not just a philosophical type. They're actually a successful business owner and I would argue in a genuine yet unorthodox way, unfortunately unorthodox way, mastering the craft of tile, actually tile obsession. Little shout out to that brand Nathan is a thoughtful person, a friend of the Culture Matters podcast, supporter of Culture Matters, a friend of mine for some time. And we're going to unpack what that even means, considering the circumstances by which we met. We could do that today. But someone that you want to follow for a handful of reasons, philosophically, business-wise, I think there's a lot to learn. Thanks for coming back on the show.
I'm super excited. The first episode I enjoyed so much, and you asked me pretty quickly for us to do a second one, and of course I'm going to say yes to that. So, thanks for having me back on. Appreciate it.
You know, you've been going on more shows. Is that correct?
I have been, yeah. None of them quite like what you've got going on. It's funny because a lot of them are just like construction oriented podcasts and YouTube channels and that kind of stuff. And I can't help myself. I take everything just whatever emerges in my mind is what comes out of my mouth typically. So some of these guys I feel bad for, they have me on, they're like, let's talk about tile. And I talk about tile and then it'll just go off the deep end at some point, almost always. Um, but it seems to be endearing for some reason to people. So yeah, I have been going on more of them.
Hey, would you say that when you talk about going deep, but when you go into your philosophy of that underpins what you're actually up to and why you're actually up to it, have you actually seen that that's resonated with some of these business owners at some level, where whether that be inspiration, whether that be some level of curiosity, um, have you
Yeah,
seen a shift or a change in behavior? Even
I I think so. It's difficult because I think a lot of the things that I say resonate with people, but they also have their own mental habits in place. And so in real time, I don't think a lot of people are using necessarily critical thinking. They're maybe just a little bit infatuated with the words. And so it resonates with them. But then, stuff will, once they dig in a little bit, certain habituated ways of thinking will come back and they'll kind of just revert back to the hustle and grind mentality or mantra, that sort of thing. And really my whole I don't know what to call it, just the spirit in which I like to operate does not harmonize well with a lot of that type of culture, which is fine. I'm a different person in that way. But I think so. I think it does resonate with people. Um, how to gauge that, I don't know. You know what I mean? What metric am I going to use to really gauge that? I get messages from people that tell me this or that, but those are vanity metrics. So I think so, to answer your question.
um for the more thoughtful listener,
Mhm.
have you ever second guessed yourself, putting yourself out there as it relates to your thoughts and your words on the social platforms? And if, yeah,
Um, I wouldn't say second guess. I'm always looking for opposition. You know what I mean? Not in the argumentative way or egotistical seeking, but just for the dialogic or the value that comes from people who don't agree with you and who in real time are not overwhelmed with just big words or whatever. I'm seeking the person that can track what I'm saying and oppose it. You know what I mean? That's real value there. Um, but I don't get actually. I don't. I was very fearful a few years ago to really speak up about anything. Not that I'm super vocal now. I'm not extremely vocal, but anymore I don't care. I'll whatever I want to talk about, I'll talk about pretty much. A lot of the lines have eroded in terms of social media image. There is no form or structure to that anymore. It's kind of just dissolved into whatever whim or fancy inspires or catches me, if that makes sense.
why?
Because a lot of things over time have become very abstract to me, and just notions of human structure, they've lost a lot of authority to me for whatever reason. And so things dissolved in a way that I didn't necessarily foresee, but I didn't oppose, because
Hmm.
the dissolution of certain form about what a thing should or should not be, like once you get past those notions, it's like you can make it whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. You can say what you want.
So where's that authenticity in that conversation, if at all, in your estimation? Is there a
So
connection?
yeah, well, I think, are you asking is that an authentic way of putting your symbol into the world? Is that what you're asking? Like, is that a virtuous way of behaving? Or
Yeah, let's start with that. Is that about a precondition for authenticity, even if below awareness,
well, I think that
or even if unintentional, rather? I don't know.
I
Because
think
I'd like to ask you about authenticity, because I've been trying to figure it out myself. What it
yeah,
means, what it means to our
yeah,
culture. Why are we talking about it? So, but
right.
first, yeah, I'd like your thoughts on that. Is that
Well, I think the unintentional part is actually a factor. I think that our inadvertent behavior is psychologically telling. I think that there's a lot of symbolism wrapped up in that inadvertent behavior that when you unpack it, you can actually get to the quality, if you will, um, of the authenticity, if that makes sense. If there is authenticity there to be gauged, you can sort of feel out the nature of it through the inadvertent behavior. So being inadvertent, that's the have you heard the thing? Do you listen to Alan Watts ever?
I
He
don't think I do.
okay. He
Maybe
he was
that's a
like a
Watts answer, though.
I don't think I do. That
Like
could be.
what?
Yeah, okay. I don't think I do. Do you
I don't
listen
think I
to him?
do. I don't
Yeah,
know how
yeah.
to answer it, right? Because yeah, because you asked me, do you ever listen? Have you ever listened to, wait, did you say, do you ever listen to Alan Watts ever?
No, I said, have you ever listened to Alan
Okay,
Watts?
yeah. Have you ever listened to Alan Watts? The answer would be yes. I'm not
But
sure
do
it'll make
you?
so difficult.
Yeah. No, I
I have
understand.
listened to him.
Okay.
I
He
just don't know
relayed
what it
this.
means.
Well,
I think I'm answering it defensively because
yeah,
of this inadvertent behavior that we're talking about.
yeah. Well, that's what I'm getting at, the inadvertent thing. He tells the story from, and I've not read Von Kleist, but he relays the story from Von Kleist about, you have or haven't?
No, I haven't. Write it down.
I want to, just because he mentioned this story. It was about trying to hit a bear, but the bear could read your mind. And so the bear knew everything that you were planning. It always knew what you were planning and what you were scheming because it knew your thought. And so the only way to attack the bear was on accident. It's a very Zen thing, and it's a very Buddhist thing. They give you these. I don't identify or claim to be any sort of Buddhist or anything like that. I do enjoy quite a bit of the thought that comes from that, but they have these things in it in Buddhism or in Zen Buddhism called koans, and a koan is this simple idea or this simple thought that on the surface of it seems absurd. It's kind of like a haiku. Haikus have this absurd nature, this silly nature to them that that causes them to be what's the word I'm looking? It causes them to be inadvertent. It causes them to be not subtle. There's a specific word I'm reaching for, but I can't find it. Not intentional. It causes them to be unassuming. That's the word. So a koan or a haiku or something that's very unassuming. The idea is there's a deeper truth to it always, and you can't get to it necessarily through logic. You get through it through experience or revelation. And I like that idea, and I think that is connected to this thing of inadvertent behavior. So when it comes to authenticity, I think to logically behave is underpinning the nature of true behavior. And when I say logically behave, I mean to model your behavior after logical thought that you have chronologically laid out in your mind and said, I will be this, that, and this. It's contradictory to the nature of emergent reality. Like we're not puppet masters over reality like we think we are, in spite of all of our planning and that sort of thing. So what I'm saying in terms of being authentic is the way to be authentic is just to be. It's not to plan it. It's not to practice it. It's not to try and be that. It's to unattach it from all the technicalities of thought in the mind and logic and all of that, and just what emerges, emerges. Perhaps similar to like in business language or entrepreneurial language, the flow state. You know, the entrepreneurs are always talking about flow state, that sort of thing. I think maybe it would be something akin to that. Living in a way that is living, is being, and not necessarily living in a way that is a manipulator of creation. Not necessarily living as a demigod, but just living as a being, if that makes sense.
What do you think? How observant have you been of the current pop cultural authenticity conversation?
Very, and anything, unfortunately, I think that enters into the zeitgeist of mainstream in that way will be, what's the word I'm looking for? It's going to be misunderstood always.
Is it commoditized or distorted?
Yeah, for sure. Commoditized for sure, which I think though it's the distorted thing I think is very accurate, because when things are commoditized in such a way that it's like it's packaged as a pill or this thing that you can relay to someone, there's an ease of access there that is contradictory to the nature of value and rarity.
It's a great point. Let me just make sure I follow you. Value rarity as in the sense that the individual has to there's a transformation that would occur in the transgression of opposing thoughts.
Yeah.
Like their preconceived concept of what the framework and behaviorism as a result of that.
Mm-hmm.
Who I am as a person is going to adapt and respond in the interaction of an idea that opposes the nature of my being. And I'm
Right.
negating that by just kind of drinking
Right.
the
Exactly.
authenticity in the bottle that's been
Right.
packaged up for me, or eating it pre-packaged microwave. I'm not getting the
Right.
ingredients. I'm not hunting for the ingredients. I'm not
Right.
cooking the ingredients. I'm not like I can overanalyze or over analogize this. Am I following you correctly? It's the journey, not the destination, would be a cliche way of saying it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. All of the value of authenticity is found through the negation of um, all that is not us, all that is not the true self. Whatever the idea of the true self is, it is something that the Western mind especially likes to. We like to pile. I mean, how do I want to word this? You understand it in the West. I mean, we're post Enlightenment, post scientific revolution. The subject object divide in the West is so deeply ingrained into the Western mind that we view ourselves as objects in this world and not subjects in this world. We like, this is the thing that's so tricky about the nature of science is we often forget these are all things, they're truths and they're patterns that we can discover that are true to reality, but they do not make us gods over reality. They're all forecasting devices. They're all methods through which we can manipulate reality. And they can be very, very, very accurate, but that doesn't mean that it's still not a proxy to the real thing. Um, if that makes sense. How what I lost my train of thought. We're doing a podcast at 8:30 at night.
I've curiosity. I have a curiosity. Well, first of all, we were on. I want to make sure I get this right. Authenticity, the common cultural conversation around authenticity.
Mhm, mhm.
You're making an argument that the value of authenticity is negated by just accepting this pop
Right,
cultural
right,
buzzword. The
right,
value of authenticity, the value of actualizing an example of this, which would be, let's say, the example of living authenticity, would the value and figuring that out for yourself.
right,
When it's
right.
packaged up and sold to us, it's no matter what, we'll be using the words, but not acting out the meaning. Like, let me,
Yeah,
right? Whether,
yeah,
and that goes for anything, is what you were kind of, I think. If
yeah,
it's reached the common public, it's kind of
right.
just a word or a sentiment. It may not, we actually, so yeah, am I following that correctly?
Yeah, you are. And I don't want to be too cynical about um I like to think of almost everything in terms of a Gaussian bell curve. I don't know why. A long time ago I started thinking about things statistically and philosophically it's actually come in very handy with a lot of thoughts because the nature of reality, like the ontology of things, what is going on, I think if you were to use something mathematically to track like how things occur and in what ways they occur, 67 point or 66.7 whatever percent is going to be within one deviation on this bell curve, right? And then the farther you get out on this bell curve, the more and more rare these events become until you get out to a 4 or 5 or 6 sigma event, these so-called black swan things. And like Nassim Taleb and his
Yeah.
thoughts, I think that there's a lot of power in that notion. I think that as things become more rare, they also bring with them a level of gravitas that's far more impactful on reality. And when we're talking about authenticity, it's not an on off switch, it's not binary. It is, everything is on this Gaussian bell curve. And so the real, I think, verbiage would be not you are authentic or are not authentic. I think it's more aligned with being more authentic and discovering more of
Mm.
the human self I don't want to say yourself, because you're really tapping into something universal that is all of us. And the more that someone taps into that, first of all, I think the rarer individual that is. I think that the farther out these type of individuals become, the more likely it is that they are Christ figures, they are Buddhas, they are Gandhis, they're those type of individuals. And those type of individuals are not everyone. And so it's like this. If you have a book that's called How to Be Authentic, you might as well rename it How to Be Jesus Christ and sell it to people.
Hmm.
And if you sell 5 million copies of that, what does that mean? That there are 5 million Jesus Christ walking around on the planet? It seems highly unlikely. Um, so that's all I'm getting at there is, if something's commoditized and packaged in that way, if it's commercialized or industrialized, um, it is counterintuitive to the nature of things which are rare and beautiful in reality.
What about not being authentic? Why don't we, if we were trying to be the least authentic,
Mhm.
how would we go about that?
Well, I don't think that being not authentic is possible, because you would have to do that through a level of awareness that that's what you were doing, and so you are authentically being something else, which in and of itself it is an authentic behavior of sorts. But then it just comes down to the virtue of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are your motivations? Why would you be doing that sort of thing? And I think that's where deceit enters in a way that I can't get around manipulative behavior with virtue intact. That's just me. I can't find myself there. Um,
Really?
yeah, I think people try and sell that as if it is possible, but it's in my own feeling about that is I'm not a manipulator of reality. I'm a being within reality, and I just don't like to tinker with the substrate. I trust what the entire system is doing, and I want to find myself at a version. I want to find myself as a version of myself that is in harmony with reality. Everyone is in harmony with reality in the sense that we exist. There is no unreal person. If you are a person, you are a real person, but you're existing in shades of authenticity or inauthenticity. I think that if we were to boil it down in a stereotypical way, an inauthentic person perhaps would be just someone who's maybe unaware of the ways in which they hurt others, the ways in which they're hurting themselves, and trying to play God.
I like where this is going because this makes me think of beyond good. Like we got a binary of good and evil, it seems like, in the authentic
Mhm.
versus authentically inauthentic, in a sense. Uh, and then you bring this question of the lack of, or yeah, the individual that is unaware
Mhm.
of the inauthenticity.
Right.
And that's the argument for inauthenticity. Essentially, it becomes an awareness,
Yeah.
what spiral in a sense. So then it becomes, but then you ended it with this idea of becoming God. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? I want to feel like, so I can pull that string.
Yeah. I think that human beings are the closest thing that we can observe in. So people like to conceptualize God as an entity, and I think that there are logical problems with that. But if we could do that, I think that's where the symbolism of Christ comes in. If God were in a if God were in an atomized form, if he were in a singular form that to the senses, the human being's senses, is some sort of entity within the universe. The reason I word it that way is because I think that behind all of that, it's all hologram. Anyways, there is no actual separation. I think it's all the appearance of separation, and they're pragmatic and practical reasons for that. But I think that Christ, the symbol of Christ, the power of that symbol, um, is that God thing that I was talking about. I think that's human beings. And so when I say play God, I don't think that we're not meant to be manipulators of the substrate in the sense that we cultivate the land, we create culture, all those sort of things. But I think when that behavior transgresses is when we turn it toward other humans. And if it's in a form of manipulation or deceit, you're playing God, is what you're doing, except you're playing God with other gods. And it just has an unethical flavor to it, to me, for whatever reason.
Hmm.
Does that make sense? It
Well,
felt a bit rambly.
no, well, the reason I think it makes sense is because listening to your how you, am I understand if I'm not understanding you correctly, this idea of it being inadvertent. I go back to the bear in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
It can hear your thoughts, so the way to surprise it is a surprise on an accident. So if that's a philosophy you're taking literally in the sense of your life, then what you're saying I follow, because
Well, I think
it sounds like you don't want to get involved in that fight, but I'm curious, meaning the fight, they're like, because when you were describing that piece there, I'm thinking, well, that's going to lead to essentially conflicts in this substrate, as you would put it.
right.
And the question is, how do we reconcile those conflicts? With
Right.
what degree are we going to participate in the game?
Right.
And I'm not sure. Well, I'm not. I don't. I mean, I'm participating at the degree that I think I'm participating. I'm
Mm-hmm.
also participating at varying degrees that I'm at varying degrees. I'm not quite clear
Right.
how in alignment my thoughts of how I'm participating are with how I'm actually participating.
Right. Right.
And so, like, I want to say, you know, I want to do something about that. So I'm
Right.
participating in this system. It sounds like you're choosing not to participate in the fight. And
Uh,
so part of me wants to pull you in the fight. Ironically, just whilst having this conversation, you're participating
right.
in the fight.
Right.
So not to, so anyway, just funny.
Well, I
Like,
think that there's a way you can delineate. Because I was speaking particularly about deception and manipulation. If I have to enter into conflict or dialogue with someone where there will be opposing viewpoints, um, I I want the truth, right? We all want to come to some conclusion that we feel is in harmony with truth as best as we can perceive it. And so honesty is the best policy. My I think everything has to do with awareness and observation. I think that human motivation is the deepest of things that a person can study. I don't think anything is more complicated than human motivation. Um, sorry, dropped my phone. There's a quote. I'm not trying to go entirely Eastern on you, but Rumi. I don't know if you heard the Rumi quote that said he said that we're not a drop in the ocean, we're an ocean in a drop. Um, I think that when a person goes inward, there's two ways that a person can see reality. You can see, let me take that back. There are two things that have to be observed to see reality harmoniously. You have to see the external world with your senses. You have to recognize the nature of what it is to use your senses, because number one, those are devices within our biology. They're measuring mechanisms, so they're proxies. So number one, you have to recognize that the external world only comes to you through proxy. But you have to understand, how do I see it? If your internal world is continually attaching itself to your external world, then it's clouding your vision. It's polluting the ability for that sensory data to just come to you in a pure way. On the other hand, if your internal world, if you have no time or interest in observing your internal world in a way that is not being interrupted by the external world, then you'll never discover the internal riches. And so to live harmoniously in reality, you have to enter into conflict, because the way that we feel as existing human beings is separate from other human beings. Now, I think technically that is all illusion, but it's hard for people to let the truth of that illusion sink really deep into them so that it affects their behavior.
Mm.
And that's why the introspection is so important, because the introspection is where you can go into your own emotion, into your own feelings, into your own motivation. And the deeper you go into those things, ironically, the more the external world and these other beings that you will enter into conflict with will, I don't want to say appear to you as logical, but you'll have more understanding, right? The cultivation of empathy and understanding is not through pointing your finger at somebody else and telling them this or that, but it's through the observation of either them in an unadulterated way or the self in an unadulterated way. So then when conflict arises, I think you're much more primed to help not just yourself, but your opponent understand that we ultimately are one mind, and we ultimately are trying to get at the same thing, but that whatever that thing is, there are no technical or logical terms that we can put on it. It's just a motivating force. It's a thing that is motivating both of us to oppose each other, and it's nested within this motive of either truth or conclusion or an ending of sorts. It has a narrative flavor to it. It's telling a story of sorts, and we're all trying to get at whatever that story is about. And so when you say not entering the fight, there is no entering or exiting. It's just a matter of the ways in which we choose to participate, the ways in which we choose to engage. And if you're not,
Well, is that
well,
is that choice? Do we choose? Do we actually choose that choice? Right? Because
mm,
like I feel like I can't escape this choice.
mm,
Like, am I gonna actually do? I'm not gonna not. There's, yeah. I don't know.
yeah.
Like this idea. So, all right, I'll read this maybe. Well, like this love
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah.
This love stuff, right? So I thought about, I just love harder. I decided to love proportional to the friction,
Hmm.
tension, hatred, or perceived hate cast my way, and I've grown to love more from this proper domino. I thought you had an interesting retort to that. Seems like an internal alchemy of sorts.
Right.
I'm thinking, what do you mean by that? Seems like an internal alchemy of sorts. I would like to.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
that's the way in which we enter into conflict. So human beings are funny because you have your genetic disposition, which is going to incline you to behave in certain ways, but then you also have your upbringing, you have your epigenetic influence, all of that. And I think that most of the sensitivity that human beings exude within reality is not necessarily genetic. I think most of it is culturally influenced. I think most of it is parentally influenced, education, all of that stuff, and the state of the entrepreneurial world, the business world, the working class. I mean, unfortunately, the work that they do in the class that they're in is one that nature is hard. You know, nature is very hard, and it doesn't often leave a lot of room for people to do this type of internal alchemy. If a person is fortunate enough to have time and leisure to look at a flower or to look at a tree or a cloud or anything like that, beauty in any form, then they're very fortunate because that's where the alchemy takes place. Um, Beauty has this power over us that's transcendent, and we don't. There's all sorts of that can come from an infinite number of places. It doesn't matter where in the material world that originates. We can say that it's entirely material, but it still doesn't alleviate us of the problem of captivation. We're still captivated by it. And all of that nested within a Darwinian framework or an evolutionary framework or whatever type of materialistic framework you want to apply to it, it does not alleviate us of beyond. What is beyond it? And what does it mean? The meaning of it. And so what I was saying by that internal alchemy is that Jay, you have to tell me, are my thoughts wandering tonight? Because I feel like I keep
I
trying to
don't think
make
so.
points.
You're helping me with this a couple things. Like one of them would be I can go on for an hour about why I think I'm this way,
Mm-hmm.
but does it, you know, I don't think I'm going to deviate from this path, this inclination, this. It's like part of it. I have this view of how I think you should live your life, or this person should live their life, or the listener should live their life, or other guests should live.
Right,
Right. I have this view.
right,
Let's say it's just my own autobiography coming to a head,
right.
genetics, epigenetics. And ultimately, it is not an absolute truth.
Mhm.
Should I cast it away, or should I pursue it with the utmost insane vigor?
Yeah, it's
And I'm trying to say, like, I don't know.
choose your
Um,
gods.
um, huh?
You know what I mean? Choose your gods. It's all it comes down to.
So
Choose your
you're helping
gods.
me with this thought. I mean, I didn't know. I wasn't sure where we were going to go tonight, but I'm
Right.
good with where we're going. Um, 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 so no, just to retort, no, we're. I mean, I feel pretty good about
Yeah.
what you're saying and how you're saying it, and that's why I wanted to ask you about this
Right.
like, even if my fate is not, I'm not choosing it, I'm only making choices within a predisposed framework,
Hmm.
you know, why not just pursue it, right?
Right.
Why not just go all in on it?
Hmm.
I don't know, what do you think?
Well, I think it really comes down to motivation, and really this is where we, we can't ever cast off faith because faith is implicit to our choices always. Because a choice is not a choice without options, and options imply a road that diverges. And if a road diverges, we're not prophets in the world. We can't know through choice which road will lead where. We forecast and we prophesy to ourselves to the best of our ability. But at the end of the day, um, a person can do whatever they want. You know what I'm saying? Like there is no should is a funny word. It's a very funny word because should is for some people should is a word of encouragement and for others it's a word of torture.
Yeah.
So I think it really comes down to the individual. The world is diverse and um people come in with think about motivations. I don't think that there is one supreme motivation. I don't think there's one supreme ethic. There's not one supreme truth. I think that the whole system is irreducibly complex. And so what we see and what we observe the infinite cascade of motivations are all perfectly allowable and perfectly choosable, if you will, or whatever. You can be motivated however you want to be motivated. Whether or not we choose those motivations, I'm not sure. But to generalize it, I think you have to step back and to the best of your ability, look at swaths of people, look at nations, look at cultures, look at groups of people, and perhaps crowdsource your wisdom and understand, like, is there something to this particular motivation or that motivation? Um, and make your choice. That's the biblical message of choose you this day whom you will serve. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Really?
we yeah, we are subjects in this universe. We're not gods. We're perhaps we are, but we've subjugated ourselves to our creation, which is the biblical idea too with Christ. Christ, the Bible talks about him um, being found as a man. And it says somewhere in there that he fashioned himself as a man. Like, what type of strange subjugation is that? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's subjugation to the opposite end, that there is this idea of eternal life. If that's on one end of what could be, Christ is on the opposite end of that. He is death. I mean, that's what he died, right? And so I understand the
Wow.
importance of the symbolism of the resurrection and all that. I get all of that, but that's all post alchemy. That's post transformation, is where the life emerges. And so we're all subjects in this world. We're all slaves to motivation. We're slaves to a universe that will unendingly outpace us. We're subjects. And so we do our best. We, people like to feel good about their quote unquote objective choices, but it's all relative to the definitions that we have created about what objective is. um, because at the end of the day, there is no real such thing as objectivity from within the system. I know that there are some philosophers that would argue against that, but I don't see any way around it personally. And actually, there's a lot of modern day computer scientists that talk about this in
Mm.
a very in-depth way, that some of it goes over my head. But I just don't know that there's any way around our subjugation, you know. Perhaps that's what's happening with AI and quantum computing, and the nature of that whole thing feels progressive in the sense that it feels like it is an emergence of another level of
Let me get this
intelligence.
straight. Let's look at microcosm here, like a
Mm-hmm,
microcosmic, a cosm of example.
mm-hmm,
Going on your subject, if in the existential sense, I guess we're subject.
mm-hmm,
You
mm-hmm.
mean
Right.
okay?
Yeah.
In some form of material deconstructive sense, we're an object right now of a listener,
Mm-hmm.
and based on how they perceive us through the lens of how they're relating to what we're talking about and how it's the valence, the
Mm-hmm.
value that's called up through them. There's going to be there's going to be a power dynamic between
Right.
them and us.
Yeah.
We
These are internal.
like we're their object, and that
Right.
we could become they could become subjects of us
Right. Right.
in that relationship.
Yeah.
My estimation is how that relationship occurs over space time,
Mm-hmm.
the iterations of a relationship, is gonna, like, it matters to
Mm-hmm.
me, in my own autobiography.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I think it's real. I think it's very real. Sorry. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, so where I'm going with this is there's something, okay, real, significant, meaningful for sure. I mean, in a materialistic sense, I'm embodying this. I'm here. I'm me.
Right.
I'm Jay, right?
Right.
And I'm gonna have to be here for a while.
Right.
And there are things that I want, and there are things that I need. And although I think I'm aware that I am unclear really on which is which,
Mhm. Right.
want and need, I still am moving in a certain direction, right?
Right. Right.
Whether preordained or not by my environment. So, and I'm like, okay, I'm occupying space time, and how long I'm going to be occupying it, I'm not sure, but I'm like occupying it. So where
Right.
I'm going with that is this there's so much to that idea in my view, is like, even this conversation, it creates this, what you were, something real is happening. People are going to listen to this, and okay, people listen to this, and let's say they admire this, they admire us as through this conversation, and so that's one set of people. Then another set of people have this whole disdain for us.
Right.
I can't get away from, and I mean, this is the path that I'm on, the relationship that I curate with both of those sets of people reveals my value while I'm here,
Mhm.
to all people, to me, to like, to me, it's significant. It's it's very real. It's more valuable than anything. And yet I occupy a lot of, uh, you know, and yet I'm still on this, in this system,
Right.
vying for just
Right.
the aesthetic stuff, the
Right.
materialistic, all that, let's just say, the pursuit of happiness.
Mhm.
Although right, that false promise,
Right.
I'm still all in on that, but I'm more so interested in, conceptually interested in those, in that relationship with, let's just say, friends and enemies. I mean, or not even friends and enemies, like admire, or I don't even know how to, if I make I'm interested in the relationship of good and evil.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be good despite my self-centered pursuit, you know, bordering on narcissism
Right.
and
Well, yeah.
entitlement, right?
Right.
Super entitled to be able to even not do things that I don't want to do, and
Right.
pursue things that I think I know, or think I do want to do.
Yeah.
I'm just like, so help me out here. That's kind of like, although, so there's so much that, we make each other our subject and our object. We were talking about what social media is and what this is, and I think, like, what are we even doing, right? Why is
Right.
this, what are we doing, and how does this
Yeah.
impact? So yeah,
Well,
I
the
can't
brain.
quite finish my thought. I'm not there.
Well, contemplating you're contemplating contradictory states almost, but that's the nature of reality. I think that you're not off. I think that you are laying out two ways of being that we all are all the time. It's I think though that it's perhaps that not the deception, I think maybe the imbalance or the way in which that becomes harmful to what the entire system is doing, perhaps, although it's a very arrogant statement to assume we can understand what the entire system is doing. I take the viewpoint that I would rather step back and assume that the intelligence that brought me forth into the world is an intelligence that I can trust. And so if I have angst about my own objective or what feels to me as an objective existence within reality, if I have angst about that, the only place I can personally trace that back to is a delusion within myself that reality is not real and that there are alternative dimensions or states or ways of being that are realer than what I'm experiencing. And that is, it's a driving force and it's a driving factor. It's a creative factor, but I also think it's a psychologically terrorizing factor if you are a person whose disposition is, I think it has to do with psychological disposition, number one. If you are a person whose disposition is more seeking or more driven, then you're also going to be the type of individual more inclined to existential angst. And I think that the angst at its root is a disharmony in the weight that we put on these two things we're talking about, the this and that of things, if you will. Yes, we're all just specks in the system. But if we believe that the system is true, then we're also integral parts of the system. The system is irreducibly complex, which I think, like the stuff that's emerging from the field of quantum physics and all that, I shouldn't say emerging, it's been emergent for the past 50 years, kind of shows us all of that too. I mean, what's this idea of superposition? You know, you spin an atom or one direction on one side of the planet, and this is all mathematic, this is all theoretic, but the math checks out. So I think it's safe to assume that maybe there's something to it. What I'm getting at is this interconnectedness of all things. It's that's what I was saying earlier about the observation of the external world and the internal world. It kind of is harmonious with this idea of an interconnected and unified system, but also an interconnected and unified system that's playing games with itself. And I think the game that the system is playing with itself is that the beings within it, they experience life. What a strange thing that is. And so what is the experience of life? Why are there so many data points? Why does life, as we observe it and see it, biological life, why does it keep popping up like it pops up? Well, if you're a data scientist, you want data. You want more and more and more iterations. And if we're going to plug it into like an evolutionary idea, it's giving whatever is going on in the universe, assuming that the biological path is perhaps the path that intelligence is seeking out, assuming that that's what it is doing, then life emerging just randomly, sporadically, to the tune of billions and billions and billions of opportunities, if you will, or sparks, if you will. It's data collection. There's something going on with intelligence beyond us that sees fit to play this game with itself. And you are that game. I am that game. And that's where that angst comes from, because the whole experience feels to us as if, no, I have to stay this course. I need to go this path. I need to behave in this way. And so there's a reality to it. There's a truth to it. But it's all nested within the system that we are a part of.
So in the spirit of that, I wrote this down. I am here to create open feedback loops.
Mm-hmm. That's what's going on. Here. Yeah. That's what the universe is doing. If you think about it, what is phenomena? What is experience? Like, what is the front edge of reality? Like, what is energetic like, what is motion? What is animation? It's an infinite number of interconnected happenings. It's all an interconnected happening in an unending way. And which is also this whole other strange thing to the whole thing, is that an unending universe that's going, it's expanding. Like, it's a mind-blowing thought. And then to think like it's a Heideggerian thought, like why? Well, why anything and not nothing? I don't know, but I think that when you come to that level of observation, if you will, it serves to, this is going to sound
What is
very
the
woo
answer
woo.
to, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going
But
to say it's a very woo woo thing, but it's the expansion of consciousness. It's your intelligence um, reconnecting with the larger and more infinite intelligence that it emerged from. And the more we get trapped into our own individualistic narrative, I think the more disconnected we can become from that intelligence that we emerged from. And when the boundaries of our own individualistic intelligence break down, um, it's not a logical thing, it's an experiential thing. Your intuition increases, your empathy increases, your all of the virtues that a human being would like to embody for whatever reason, the virtues that we idealize, those things emerge when 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 we allow our experience to be connected to the whole system.
but to do that, I believe my anxiety, the type of anxiety that I bear is proportional to how I relate to conflicts
It is.
and
Yeah.
interpersonal, as well as any other phenomenological.
Well,
Interpersonal.
that's awareness, right? So that connected relationship is the weight of that angst relative to the conflict that you enter into increases through awareness, right? So you can bear it because you're not only becoming more and more aware of the gravitas or the angst of the weight of being, but you're also becoming more and more aware of just the supreme lovely time that being can be when we connect with it in that way. So they're on a seesaw, not seesaw, but they're like an interconnected give take thing. So sorry, what you were saying?
Well, no, I look from an interactive standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyday person can relate to this. There's people in our life that we dislike,
Right,
we have issue with.
right,
The thermometer of our faith, of our substance, is
mm,
in the revealing of those is
right.
revealed in how we relate to the relating of others relating to us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a mathematical relationship there, or a chemistry.
Well, if someone treats me poorly,
Mm-hmm.
that's my perception. First of
Right,
all, to even get to the root of it, to understand the meaning behind it or the quality of it, I have to relate to it. To even go
right,
beyond my perception,
right,
that means I have to engage with the person.
right,
Engage. So already there, I have to be in being. It's like in action. I have to be acting out a set of values.
right,
Like, and so what is that? Compassion, empathy, response ability, the ability to respond, forgiveness. Like, I have to actually embody
right.
and be a vessel for a behaviorism just to get past my perception. Because meaning, if I don't even go to step one of the engagement, I could think that they are being cruel to me when they're not intentionally doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I am perceiving the cruelty based on preconceived
Right,
notions of reality based on my own authentic
right,
relationship with reality. So now step one is like figure out if it's perception or not.
right.
Now, all right, let's go and say that it is not just my perception, it's their intention, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if first of all, does that matter? Well, I can make it matter.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, and if anything, you're making the argument. whether you're trying to or not, or the argument, I'm gonna make it matter.
Yeah.
Now, to what utility?
Right.
If it's me versus them because I need the resource they have, the food, the water, well, then I'm gonna have an aesthetic, not an aesthetic value system, like a materialistic value system.
Right.
We both have plenty of food, we both have plenty of water. I have this entitlement that I can be beyond nature.
Right.
Supernatural. So the only thing would stop me from not killing them or killing their spirit, cutting them off from my reality, maybe never talking to them again, is what? My supernatural beingness, potential, entitled, everything in a vacuum. That's making me God, a godlike. That's making me beyond the subject. If anything, they're my subject in a psychological sense, to say the least. And what I'm saying is, so let's say if step one, if I don't engage with my counterpart, my enemy in this case, I can't differentiate between my perception of the interaction and the truth, or the intention of the interaction. Then let's say that their intention is to hurt me emotionally, physically. So I'm saying even give them the intention. So I did interact with them. Their intention was to hurt me. I can break the paradox of victim with love.
Yes.
Because we're both victims in a sense. If
in that
I'm
we're
being
subjugated
victimized by
a
person that's a bully. I'm just trying to use the victim bully dichotomy to like simplify this.
Right.
Oppressed, oppressor, victim, bully.
Yeah.
What alpha? I don't know.
Well, it's looking at this whole relationship through the lens of a power. It's a very Nietzschean way of looking at it. But what I was going to say to the first thing that you said, though, is what I'm describing. There's a way of being, I think, that it naturally allows your experience to be more intuitive, number one. And so that when you enter into conflict with people, you are not so inclined to take one mode of interpretation. If I'm entering into conflict with someone, I'm going to enter into conflict with the idea in my mind that there could be 10 things going on or an infinite number of things. And I want to intuitively feel all of that. Like, I really want to feel the emotional state of what my enemy could be feeling, because through the intuition of that and the feeling of that, I've always found that there's a technical understanding that naturally flows. The words will show up if you feel what the person is feeling. And so that whole process, I think, is you enter into that intuitive state when you dissolve your own belief systems, when you dissolve your own abstracted and derivative structures in the mind. When those are dissolved, you're leaving yourself in a state of something more akin to an observatory state. And that observatory state really opens you up to intuitive behavior. And so when I'm entering into conflict, it is the von Kleist thing. It's the bear thing. The bear can read your thoughts. It knows the nature of the conflict that's about to happen. And so I think that number
that's why
one,
I have to be a child.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. Yes, it's a very good. That's childlike faith. That's how
That's
we
what I'm
enter
interested in pursuing.
Yeah, it's how we enter into the kingdom of heaven. And
What? What do you mean?
well, that's what Christ said. To enter into the kingdom of heaven, you need childlike faith. You don't remember? You didn't know that
I
in
haven't read the
Matthew?
Bible yet.
Okay.
I
Well, remember, I pastored. Remember, so I have so many analogies from that.
No, I love them, and I want to read the that's a whole podcast we'll do, if
Yeah.
you're willing. So, but go on. I want to know what you're saying here.
Well, I'm saying that being a more intuitive and empathetic person, first of all, is going to change the whole dynamic of conflict, number one. And it's also going to alleviate you of you entering into the conflict with motivation. I think that motivation colors everything. I would rather enter into conflict. This is, I don't know the rightness or wrongness of this, but my baseline assumption in conflict is that this person is experiencing something real in reality. Now, the technicalities of their theories in their mind, they may or may not be accurate, but that's irrelevant because this conflict, the 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 um, the force of this conflict will not come from technicalities. It will come from emotional state. An emotional state is the thing which drives the behavior. You know what I'm saying? The behavior as it manifests will be the manifestation of emotion. And so when it comes to conflict, I think it's far wiser to be emotionally intuitive than it is to be technically inclined. And so that's the first thing I'll say to what you're saying about your first point. And then do you remember the second thing you said about that conflict was the subject thing, the subjugation in the ways in which we become gods?
Oh, yeah, I'm making an argument that if I'm that I'm called once I investigate and okay, they're not doing it on purpose, let's say, because I was saying that my perspective
Right,
can project that this person is
right,
doing something
right,
to me, and then I
right,
might avoid the conflict, avoid the
right,
conversation, avoid the person, spend my life now building a purgatory, telling everybody how terrible they are.
right,
Okay,
right.
so that's like we're not even in the game if
Yeah,
we're doing that.
right,
I'm saying get in the game now, get in this
right.
interaction. Then I'm saying now find out what their intentions are,
Yeah,
and you know what, like whatever they are, you can break the closed. It's open. Say it simply. I mean, whatever they are, love them.
right.
That would
Yeah,
be an easy
that's
way
the
to put it.
alchemy. Yeah, that's the alchemy. You can be the antithesis to what if they're exuding something that your intuitive behavior tells you this is not behavior that I want to embody, but I will enter into this conflict. It's alchemy. You're receiving from them. Perhaps it's reiterating a theory that you had. Perhaps it's true that their intent was malice, that their intent was
Yeah,
division or
let it be
whatever.
true.
Yeah.
Let
And
it be.
so it's the response to that is critical. I mean, that's the whole thing. The way that I think that this is the real crux of
This is
human
where I'm saying
relationship.
if I love them
Hmm.
and they give me more negative,
Right,
and I love them again, and they give me more negative, and I love them again. It's
right,
just more and more energy.
right.
That's growing of constructive power,
But yeah,
purposeful power. Um, um, and I have to be completely invested in that interaction to not betray myself, them, the world, even at the cost of my life.
yeah, yeah. And is motivation is the thing which disallows us from that pure existence in that conflict. So
Oh, do
we
you mean motivation in the sense that we're instantiated we're part of this substrate, as you would put it. We're part of this culture. Example, let me go try this theory when I've got 7 kids that all look to me as their protector,
Mhm.
right? That see me as their divinity before they can conceptualize divinity.
Right,
That means I'll have to even be more of the child that you're talking
right. Right.
with
To
children. So
yeah.
that's a way bigger investment in this, you know, this seemingly so to me, it's the solution of logic. It's not logical at all. It's beyond that. It's
Right.
what would be the value long term in betraying my enemy's potential to resuscitate their own love, their own heartbeat, their own, what would be the logical, you know, what would be the value of that outside of just survival?
Well, it's going to expedite their experience because you're just a mirror. You're reflecting back to them what they're expressing to you. Love is a thing which covers, right? Love covers malice. Love is a this is a biblical idea as well. Love covers a multitude of
All right, let
sins.
me like
Um,
make sure I get this straight. If they hate me
mhm,
and I hate them back, I'm going to express to them like a mirror what they or state they're in, right?
right,
My thing is, if I hate them well enough, I'm going to kill them
right,
because
right,
I might have to. They're going to try to kill me. If
right,
we take it all the way from an
right.
idea and an argument all the
Yep,
way out, it's going to be
right,
violence and death.
right, right,
So I break the mirror when I love.
right.
And you're saying the hug. I'm trying to break the negative ping pong match.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is motivation would have you to believe that I can do a good thing toward this person through embodying love toward them. And I'm saying leave off the idea that I can do a good thing toward them, leave that off altogether and just embody love. Because then you're just a neutral reflector of what they're doing. Your motivations are entities. Your motivations are not necessarily you, they're your product, they're derivative. And because they're derivative, they're not at the truest level of being. I think at the truest level of being, you can be without intent toward human beings in such a way that you are you how do I want to word this? You are a substrate for them. You are something that they can reflect. You become everything to someone. You become this infinite open thing to anyone so that the experience to them becomes exactly what they need, not because you intended it to be that for them, but because you did not react or act with them in such a way that manipulated.
Oh, interesting. React. If you look at it, like just
Right,
think of a reaction. Uh,
right,
it's
right,
doing the same action back.
right, right.
We're
Yeah,
breaking that cycle.
you're stopping it. Yeah, yeah. And I think the intentionality is key because your intentionality can be rooted in your own motives that you're unaware of. You might not know why you're
Well, I'm
engaging in that
seeking
way,
love.
seeking love.
So
Well,
if I'm seeking love and the
yeah.
embodiment of that is to love people,
Hmm.
like love everyone,
Well,
then
that comes with,
that's good.
uh, well, I think that comes with assumptions. That comes with assumptions that you understand what that means. And once again, meaning is it's this derivative thing that it all comes down to these abstract notions of representative technical language. And I think they trip us up way more than we realize. And so I'm contending that the embodiment of love and the way that that manifests in behavior is through the dissolution of my own intent. My own intent is really irrelevant to what somebody else needs. I don't know what they need. I'm not God. I'm not a manipulator of the substrate. I'm a subject on the substrate. And my conclusions about my behavior are that I heard this the other day. I can't remember what the word was, but there was this idea it was like a philosophy of mind that thoughts are entities. And the more that we listen to the entities, the more psychological angst we will experience. The more that we allow the entities to flow through us, we just observe them, then the more harmonious we live.
You said, yeah, you're not God. You're just, well, you know, you may not be God, but you could be a fallen angel,
Yeah, you could
right?
be that.
And
That's
like,
true.
just like
Yep.
watching Netflix,
Right.
enjoying the fruits that have been bestowed for you.
Right. And you
Yeah,
could
I'm
die
over
in that
here getting
state.
punched in the face, like,
Right. Right.
because
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, I'm
Right.
aware that I'm not God, but I'm also like tasked
Right.
with
You know what happened
this.
to Christ in the garden is Christ in the garden was praying and he said, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. And he was referring to going to die. And it says that when he was praying that he was sweating great drops of blood. And this is in the Garden of Gethsemane, and Gethsemane means olive press. Think about the symbolism of this. Here's a man who is embodying it's the Socrates, not so was it Socrates or Plato that they ultimately killed Socrates.
Yeah.
It's the Socratic thing where Christ is led as a lamb to the slaughter, and he doesn't answer back. He is just a reflection of their intent. He brings no intent into the world other than to love the world. And the way that he loves the world is through speaking the truth, yes, but also being truth. And I think that human beings, it's hard for us to understand the difference between the two. We want to speak truth technically, and we don't want to be truth. And I think to be truth is to be human. And to be human is to embrace all aspect of what I am. And to embrace all aspect of what I am, I have to recognize that thought, it's just a part of me. It is not me. It's just something that flows through me. And so I want to carry
Hmm.
into every interaction that same Christ-like spirit, if you will, or that Socratic spirit, where my enemies will do with me what they will, and so be it. Because the ultimate, I shouldn't say the ultimate. I don't know that there is an ultimate. I think all of this is instantiations. These are all iterations happening millions and billions of times over and over and over again for some cosmic reason that is beyond anyone. And I don't know what that thing is, because it's too far out of my mind's ability to grasp. I think everything is fractal in nature, it's repetitious in nature, and we're part of cycles that are not even approachable for us to understand. I think that's how much wisdom is within the whole system.
Hmm.
I think it's like the idea of who was it? It was Isaac Newton or Da Vinci, not Da Vinci, one of the inventors that said that we're forever standing on the shore of, well, I can't remember exactly how the quote goes, but he's basically saying when it comes to what there is to know out there, it's an infinite ocean of unknowability, and we're only right on the edge of it always. I mean, living in that kind of state, what type of arrogance do we really embody to think that um, we can manipulate the substrate? You know what I mean? That's kind of what I'm getting at.
And what do you mean by manipulate the substrate?
What I mean by that is, if what I think is true about a human being at the zenith or pinnacle of what awareness is, or what the universe, the ways in which maybe all of existence is trying to become aware of itself, is a human being. If they are at the top of that, which is an arrogant thought, I don't necessarily think that we are, but perhaps I think that all of our ideals, all of our art, all of our beauty points to that idea for whatever reason. If that is true, then to manipulate the substrate it's to pit good against evil. It's to pit God against the devil. It is to pit God, the Father against the Son. And I think that's what people do through their intention. primarily through bad intention, yes, but I also think through good intention, their judgment becomes clouded.
Okay. Help me out with this thought.
Mm-hmm.
Evil exists. However, how we exercise it reveals the degree by which it inhabits us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In the sense,
Well,
you
it's
know,
all nested. It's nested, right? It's the Hegelian thing with one truth is nested within an anti-truth, and the synthesis of the two is the relationship which creates the tension, the give and pull of reality. And so, to what you just said, it assumes that we can understand the nature of good and evil, and that's a tough thing to understand. I think that good and evil
was it
behavior.
shades? Yeah,
Um,
even if the truth of it is determined by, the place and time we live in, the
mhm.
context.
I think there's something bigger than that we can put our finger on. And I think it's just looking at what reality is doing. I think that the best way that I've been able to generalize that thing is life itself. Whatever the intent of all things are, I think that through observation we can see that it is for life to be, for life to exist, for biological life even to exist and be. And so that's a good jumping off point when it comes to a foundation of a philosophy. And that's, I think, also where love has such a strong crossover there. Love is more of an abstract notion, but really it's kind of the same thing as what I'm talking about because life, when for instance, children, what do we call intercourse? We call it love. You know what I'm saying? So biogenesis and love, they really
Hmm.
go together. One is the romantic transcendent ideal, and the other is the literal
Well, all right,
thing.
and I would say in the sense of intercourse it presupposes a biological genesis. There's
Hmm.
a there's a conceptual genesis that happens with ideas when I forgive my enemy.
Right. Yeah.
They might cast away that idea that inhabited their body that led to a demonic act.
Yeah.
Like, and if I don't believe in their redemption,
Hmm.
then I don't believe in anything. That's where I'm at.
Well,
And
in
I've
which
got
do people go unredeemed?
I think my thermometer for that would be um well, I don't know. I'm saying like in the sense that my life, like I have this I'm here and I have this destiny, this
Hmm.
fate in the sense that I think this for me.
Hmm.
So I've got to act this out, this thought for me, meaning like whoever crosses my path while I'm here, I'm gonna I'm called to act out this idea, and if I'm vanquished by my enemy, well, my ability to exercise them was proportional to my potential to love, my potential. So, you
Hmm.
know, I don't know that. I've got to believe that.
Right.
And if I fail in my lifetime, that says something more about me, my potential to love. I'll give you like a more specific example, like even just in the work that I do with people that own businesses.
Hmm.
If I fail at, I look at it like if I fail in the sense that I'm not strong enough to stay in the boardroom.
Hmm.
because of what's been said or what's been done, and I got to leave physically. That reveals my limit of my own virtue. You know, I was vanquished in a sense. I was unable to. I failed their spirit, their potential. I failed the potential. They were, you know, that interaction was more powerful than me. That, you know, love lost that day, or my capacity to reveal it lost in that relation. And that's more so, you know, so I don't know the answer to your question. I don't know that, but yeah. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that through the observation of reality, I don't think it's a terrible confession to say that people are unredeemed every day. I think people die unredeemed. I think that is reality. And so if I believe that the system is irreducibly complex and all ultimately interconnected, then I have two choices about what that could mean. It could mean that the narrative of the universe is going terribly awry, or it could mean that my interpretation of what the narrative means is off. My interpretation of what's going on in reality is that it is the system playing a game with itself. And I think that the iterations manifest as all human emotion, as all human motivation, as all human experience. I think that all of it will happen. And it just so happens that this is another biblical idea, but Christ said that it is impossible that offenses will come. But woe be to the man, is what he said. So he's saying, look, it's impossible that certain things aren't going to happen. They are going to happen. You just don't be that person. And in that context, he was actually talking about Judas, who is going to betray him. He said that to Judas, actually. And I think about that, and I think that isn't that the crossroads of fate and free will? Like right there, that's the crossroads of it. He gave a completely contradictory statement. It's like you can't make sense of that. And so what you're saying about the feeling, the intuition of to boil it down, we'll say life and death, right? You didn't use those words, but you're using words of a not a battle, a conflict, or a
Yeah. Well, like an exorcism.
yeah, an exorcism, yeah, which or an equation we could say even like mathematically this will go this way or that way depending on the variables of the
I
equation.
tried to put this equation in 30 Days of Thought. It's in like the WT matrix. It's in
Okay.
these couple pages. Yeah, it's in the book, and I even did a revised version of it. I really like your opinion on it, honestly, because
Okay.
I tried to use like an algebraic, you know, and I have no math
Right.
understanding actually at all.
I don't either. I don't either.
So I'd like your thoughts on it. Maybe we could do it if we did a podcast just on that. It would really help me
Yeah.
because I'd like to try to grapple with it a bit because I kind of gave up after the book came out, and I'd be surprised if anyone read it, frankly. But there's a couple equations in there I'd like your thoughts on.
It's not in the one that I have, is it? This is the revised one.
Well, there was an edited. It depends when you got it, but basically,
Yeah.
I added more things and revised it. But there's like two excerpts that kind of relate to one another, the
Yeah.
WT matrix. So the answer is yes. And then I did a revision. I
Mhm.
just don't know what copy you have, you know, like how new it
Yeah.
is.
I'll have to look.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
In closing, you know, in this, because I'm gonna have to get up at 5,
Right, right.
and I didn't even realize the time. I wanted to ask you about Instagram. Uh,
Okay. Yeah.
no, no.
Yeah.
In closing, what do you think the audience um should do right now? Because you're like, shit.
Should do words I love. I don't know, go take a bath. You know what I
Isn't
mean?
that funny? Yeah.
Eat some popcorn. You know what I'm saying? Like that's so that if I really had to boil it down, which is funny because now I have to give an anecdote. I have to give a should.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
should
yeah.
we
And then
do?
you could do all
Um,
that shit in the beginning that we talked about like commercializing the
yeah,
authenticity.
right, right.
Yeah, can
Find
you
me
just
at
contradict everything we just would you mind
yeah,
ending this show by contradicting everything that we were talking about?
yeah, yeah,
That's
sure.
essentially what I just asked you.
Yeah, go to my website. I have a book. Oh, sorry. That's the funny thing. I was watching this video the other day that was like, it was so wild. It's this crazy lady talking about all this weird soul stuff. It was strange. And at the very end of it, she like starts selling this book, and I'm like, okay, all these cosmic ideas, and you boil it all down to like, you want to sell me your book for 19.99? Like what? Anyways,
That's funny. Yeah, that's
I
good.
thought it was very funny. I think that you know, discovering the ways in which you still have childlike behavior inside of you is a healthy path for anyone. I think it's good to smile. I think it's good to laugh. I think it's good to lighten up. All of the existential and anxiety and pressures that people have, while rooted in biology and their neurological systems can be entirely strained and all of that, so much of it just hinges upon derivative notions in the mind. And we put all of this weight on ideas. Ideas are powerful things, but there's nothing that says, there is nothing in our existence that says that we cannot reframe our disposition toward ideas and simply play with them. And that's it. Just play with them. Um, People that go beyond playing with ideas, they start wars. And the people that just play, they don't start wars. You know what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
I would just boil a lot of stuff down for a lot of people by just saying, lighten up, just lighten up. I think that there's so many people you see it, you feel their pain, and you want to just tell them, look, man, just lighten up. It's okay. If you fail your entire life, it's still okay. It's you might get another shot. Who knows? We don't know how this whole thing is going to go. You showed up once, and that seems pretty cosmically interesting to me. If it happened once, it could happen again. So who knows? Maybe I need to get a giant tattoo of the Joker on my chest because that's how I feel about a lot of life. That it's just a big thing that's happening. And we're just part of it. Um, and I appreciate it. I really enjoy it. So how's that for a summation of grand thoughts?